Okay, so let's get started. Good morning, everyone. We are ready to get started. Welcome to Live Curious, Go Beyond 2021. We are so excited to have Brittany Dillman, Candace Robertson, and Liz Owens here with us to talk about the plug social justice into educational technology. And just a little reminders for everyone. Please remember to keep your microphone muted unless asked to unmute. If you want to ask something, you can do it through the chat. And we just remind you that this session is being recorded so that it can be helpful for many other people who can listen to it later. And thank you so much for being here. I will set the floor for our presenters.
Hi, everyone. We are so glad and excited to be here today to talk to you about plugging social justice into educational technology. Just quickly want to introduce our team. My name is Liz Owens Boltz. I'm joined by Candace Robertson and Brittany Dillman, and together we work for the Master of Arts in Educational Technology program at Michigan State University in Michigan, United States. And as we work through our slides today, we have a bit.ly link, which you can hopefully see on your screen right now, and that we will also put into the chat if you would like to follow along with our slides today.
Hi, this is Brittany. We were not sure how many people we would have, so we have several planned pathways as to how we might handle this so that we can be as personalized and responsive as possible. So this is more of a metacognitive planner thing. Liz and Candace, I think we are using the 6 to 25 participants. So we're going to use our slide deck, have 3 to 5 people in breakout rooms, and have breakout rooms based on interest. I think we should all be able to use the one slide deck. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brittany. This is how we build a flexible and adaptive presentation to be interactive with all you folks. So you get to see behind the curtain right here. Quickly, just want to review what we are calling our community engagement framework. You might also call this community norms, and just to guide our interactions today. First of all, we're all co-learners. So we're learning, you are all learning, and just let's be open to new ideas and to discussion. Move up and move back just means if you find that you are talking quite a bit in your group when we get to group work, maybe think about stepping back for a minute so that someone else can have a chance to speak. Or if you find that you're not really saying a whole lot, maybe step up and try to make your voice heard so we can hear from a variety of perspectives today. We want to embrace both and thinking versus either or. So especially when we're talking about tough topics like social justice, it's possible for more than one perspective to be valid. So let's value that. Social justice work is a journey. That's something that we recognize. This is just one small hour in your broader social justice journey. And then finally, this is a brave space. So it's okay to fail. Let's be respectful and have good intentions, but also be kind with each other because we're all learning. So with that, we'll move to the next slide. And I want to start with some definitions for the key terms we're going to be talking about today. In terms of social justice, we're defining that as justice that relates to how wealth, personal liberties, privileges, and opportunities are balanced or imbalanced in a society. And with regard to equity, we're talking about the quality of being fair, impartial, and free of bias. And I'm going to toss it over to Candace now so she can talk a little bit about how we're framing some of the topics for today.
Good morning, everyone. So to build on those definitions, we wanted to provide some topics that will help to frame our conversation, but also our thinking around ed tech and social justice. So some, but not all, of the topics that kind of fall under this large umbrella are accessibility. So we're talking about all learners, regardless of mode or platform, have equal access to the content, regardless of what assistive technology is needed in order to access that technology. culturally sustaining pedagogies, so pedagogies that foster and promote culture and that push forward for positive social transformation. Privacy, especially when we think about our socially, economically disadvantaged learners, as well as our historically marginalized and oppressed learners. Design, who is designing, what perspectives are being considered when the design of technology is happening. Access and home support. And of course, all of these framing items have gotten a lot messier with COVID-19 and the rapid adoption of technologies that needed to occur to create our high flex, hybrid, online, virtual, whatever that approach to learning that our learning community took on has highlighted some of these issues, but also exacerbated some of these issues as well.
So we would like to know what issues you are facing so that we can customize this presentation to your needs as much as possible. We have a brief one question survey that is via the bit.ly that I just put in the chat. And if you could all give us the shortest one-word phrase or brief phrase to explain an ed tech concern that is happening in your context. If you are having any trouble getting to that survey, I'm going to type the same question in the chat and you can just respond in the chat and I'll pull your answers from there. So we'll give you a minute to do that. All right, please go ahead and finish up any ideas you have and Liz will keep us moving.
Okay, so as we think about social justice, obviously there are huge, broad, systemic, national, international aspects to social justice. And a lot of that, unfortunately, we don't have control over. However, there are things that we do have control over. So as we kind of hone in our focus for today, we're going to try to focus on items and themes that you can have an immediate or somewhat immediate impact on.
And as we focus on what we have control over, here are a few strategies for your tool belt. So obviously being informed of laws, terms of service, privacy settings, Command or Control F are great friends when you're trying to do a quick scan to find where is the data stored, what are they doing with this data, what third-party tools have access to this data. Ask questions like who is designing this, who works, who's on the board, what perspectives are included when the design happens, and model this with your choice of technology as a leader. So we had a whole conversation about what we would use today. And unfortunately for us, our best answer was Google Slides because we didn't know how many people would be present. And we had to really think about like the volume of potential people in the session. But we really did go in and look at the diversity statements from Google. And we looked at different technologies that we wanted to use and looked at kind of the design process and team behind those technologies. We want to push back where it's needed. So sometimes it's hard to find a voice in spaces, but it is so important. And so sometimes it's about finding your network within your system or outside of your system that can become a part of your network to help you be courageous and brave and speak up and ask those questions that are needed. And then of course, just always be critical. Why is this tool free for my learners? What is the advantage for this company trying to move into the educational sector? What are they getting out of this for making this free tool? So here are a few quick resources for you on some questions that you can ask from The Resilient Educator, a book on culturally sustaining pedagogies from Django Paris, and then a blog post that we have about big data and student privacy. And we're going to have our discussion today through a hackathon. So we are defining a hackathon, which we know has some negative connotations to it, as a creative problem-solving event. So it does not need to involve technology. So you can think about a life hack of sticking a tennis ball underneath the chair in your classroom so that it doesn't scuff your floor. That is a creative problem-solving. That is a hack. So that is the mindset we're coming into this event with. And it's designed to be any duration. So you might see a lot of hackathons that happen over 48 hours or something like that, but really you can have a 5-minute hackathon. So we're about to have a 30-minute hackathon. And just remember that, as Liz was saying, these problems are incredibly tough. Problems in general are, but when we're talking about social justice and equity, these are very complex, layered, societally rooted problems that we're trying to tackle. So this is just one step on that journey. Your goal by the end of this hackathon will be, as a group, to develop a prototype, so a strategy or a resource that helps you tackle some of these issues in your learning spaces. And the goal is to make it actionable.
So just real quickly, we're going to talk about roles within your individual groups. And if we could just quickly move to the next slide. The role of all of the team members, again, just kind of revisiting that community engagement framework that I talked about at the beginning, and additional roles of the team leader. So the person whose birthday is next, meaning coming up the soonest, we're going to elect as the team leader. So that role, responsibilities are to maintain a dynamic that welcomes different ideas and questions, to encourage folks to contribute in their own ways, and to maintain forward momentum toward a solution. And that involves keeping on time, because 30 minutes is not a whole heck of a lot of time, but that time constraint, hopefully, we are hoping, will encourage you to come up with some kind of radical, brave solutions in this space. So one other role that we have today is the team recorder. So that will be the person whose birthday was last, so most recently happened. And that person's role is to capture the discussion in your team's Google Doc. So basically document what's happening, the main points, the main ideas that you're coming with, so that you have kind of an artifact or something to share at the end of this process. And I will toss it over to Brittany.
Hi, everybody. I have been working behind the scenes to make a word cloud of the themes that are prevalent for you in your professional context these days. So they broadly fell into access to technology, feeling overwhelmed, lack of parent support, promoting social justice and equity, and connectivity and internet access. I'm not completely sure if the access to technology is a version of connectivity and internet access. So if the person who shared that wants to chat me, whether that is the same or different, that would be cool. And so think about which of those is feeling most pertinent to you, and we'll come back to those ideas in a few minutes.
So here is a run through of the plan. So we are going to do some rapid prototyping, rapid ideation. So you're going to have 2 minutes per phase that we're about to go over to do some thinking and discussion. And then you'll have a longer time to do some prototyping. And the way we're building this hackathon is with some design thinking strategies, as well as some elements of a hackathon. So every group will have a Google document that is your hackathon guide. You'll start with phase 1, which is designing the problem. So you'll think about your theme and you'll list the issues and problems related to social justice and ed tech underneath this theme. Then your next 2 minutes will be spent defining the problem in continuation. So phase 2 is that you're going to select the most compelling problem or issue from that list you generated, and you're going to state that, and then you're going to create a 1-sentence statement that will allow you to focus on that issue for the remainder of your time together. And then phase 3, you're going to move on to understanding the problem. You're going to list as many elements of that problem as you can within the 2-minute time frame. And then you're going to consider obstacles. This is a huge part of our work in social justice and equity. So what challenges might you face from individuals, systems, or other forces? And then you're going to generate your solution or prototype in phase 5. So you're going to actually come up with an idea that you can put into action. So this might be a series of conversation starters that you need in order to have these tough conversations. This might be an infographic that explains something. It might be a drawing that represents how you're feeling about this. And but as a group, you'll design one prototype that you can then share out. You will have time once you go into these breakout rooms, and Brittany's going to guide you on that step. You will have time to figure out that team leader and the team recorder. And then we will send you updates when the 2 minutes expires so that you can move on to the next phase. And these are all of the documents which we will drop into the chat as well once teams have in a minute so that you can make sure that you have access to your Teams doc.
All right, this is Brittany. We are going to use 4 teams, and we're going to have you select your own. And we just figured this Zoom option out yesterday, so we think this is going to work. But putting you in a group to talk about a topic you don't want to talk about does not seem in line with social justice and equity themes. So our numbers may be a little wonky and not completely even, but we're going to go with that over having you talk about something that's not pertinent to you. So in a minute, I'm going to open all the rooms, and you're going to see a list. There are 4, and you're going to see a 0 on the right column in blue. You're going to click on that 0, and that's going to allow you to join that particular Zoom room. So does anybody have any questions about that? All right, let's go for it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back. I hope you had some great discussions in your breakout rooms. It's nice to all be back together again in one big Zoom room. Now we'd like to share a little bit about what you discussed in your groups and learn from your solutions. So on slide 29, there's a link to each of the team's documents, but we'd also just love to hear from you. So if one of you from each group feels comfortable sharing, we'd love to hear the idea that you came up with. So we'll start with team 1. Would someone with team 1 be comfortable just sharing a quick recap of what your prototype is?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Lisa, I'm part of team 1. Our main theme was access technology, and we found that we had a wide range of issues from students who didn't have any electricity, no internet, no devices, to those that do, but perhaps they're competing with other devices at home, struggling with bandwidth. And so our 1-sentence problem statement was, we need to find multiple ways to deliver content and assess and demonstrate learning because of issues with access. And so some of the solutions we came up with was kind of like a guide, kind of like tips that we found could help. Perfect, thank you. And so we talked about flexibility, empathy, reconsidering what are you actually asking your students to do, be more open with the school schedule and what it looks like. And then we came up with some creative ideas of perhaps talking to local businesses, internet providers, internet cafes, talking to them about buying hours in bulk to allow students to use a computer or internet. That way we're helping out the community, but also helping the students. Also talked about perhaps repurposing phones. So getting rid of that e-waste, but also again, trying to think of creative ideas as much as possible to kind of help out with the access issues that we found.
Awesome, great work. Thanks so much for sharing. Okay, so we didn't have a team 2, correct? So we'll move on to team 3. Would someone from team 3 be comfortable sharing a quick description of your prototype?
So we had, our issue was parent support, and one of the things we noticed was perhaps parents not being either physically present with students or parents not knowing how to support their students, having more trust in their students than what maybe their students need them to have. So our prototype was to have a mentor system. So we were going to have a flyer or an email sent out asking, do you have some extra love to go around, and to enlist volunteers from in that student's life. So maybe some older cousins, or some families have like neighborhood pods, and so maybe their neighborhood families could volunteer to help hold that student accountable to reach out to their teacher to, get information about their attendance and their weekly check-ins, and just having, someone else available to help hold the student accountable and to be that check-in person. Does anybody want to add in to that from our team?
No, perfect.
Fantastic. All right, let's go on to team 4. Someone from team 4 be comfortable just giving a quick description of your prototype?
Well, I'm not going to explain the actual prototype because I haven't used this as a visible thinking routine. So maybe I'll ask Kara to jump in at some point.
Yeah.
But we were talking, I wasn't being a great team leader because I wasn't keeping us on time, but it was really, really nice to be talking to one another. And we were very broad with our social justice within Mexico, and all of us coming from currently teaching or what we're teaching in Mexico, just noticing in our communities being very homogenous and coming from same economic backgrounds. And so there's just being a little bit of a disconnect between what's happening in their lives in the community and outside of their own communities of the school. So, and even sometimes it's saying within, let's say, Puerto Vallarta, they don't have like so much diversity even outside of their school community. Like the community itself is pretty homogenous itself. So yeah, we didn't really narrow it down too much, but then it's just looking at what can we do as teachers within the classroom. And I'm going to hand it off to Kara.
So the main thing we found for action was starting these conversations for students, because I think a lot of them, don't necessarily perhaps take the time to think about these things, or they might be really aware of, issues in the US, but not within their own country and community. And we also recognize that as, for a bunch of us who are from the US, it's very awkward and, to come into another country and say, hey, here's what we think about how things are going. So the compass is kind of a model of thinking, and you can plug in any topic to it, and you look at how the topic affects or is affected by nature, economy, society, and well-being. So to plug in the idea of race in Mexico and think through, nature might not be a big area, but how are people's well-being affected by their race within the country, the economy, the society, and to use it as a tool to just get people to think about it in these different categories, because it kind of can help you look at one issue from multiple different angles. So using this with students, but also we recognize that, teachers as well might not be very aware of some of the different issues within, race and diversity and equity within the country. So
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you. And I'm going to toss it over to Candace.
I'm going to reline up my screen here. So bear with me 1 second. If you don't know about the sharing a portion of your screen feature on Zoom and you're a Zoom user, very handy tool. So thank you so much for sharing. I love the range of topics that we considered within social justice and equity, and that it sounds like some really rich discussion happened in all of the groups. So we're going to ask you to individually reflect on this experience just for a minute, and you can go ahead and type into the chat what you're thinking if you feel like you want to share. If you don't want to share, that's okay too. So just take a minute to think about these 3 questions. How did you feel when discussing these issues and challenges in your groups? What lingering questions do you have? And how might an act like a hackathon be an inclusive practice that you could utilize in your learning community to gain more perspective from a variety of stakeholders? So for the sake of the recording, I'm just going to read a few of these. I feel both supported and empowered after the discussion, listening to some really great ideas and knowing that we're all considering how to create equitable access opportunities. And as they come in, I'm going to ask for 5 fast takeaways. So if anybody else would like to share either a question or a takeaway with the group verbally, you can raise your hand and then unmute yourself.
Well, yeah, right now I can, yeah. I really love the activity and how it's organized and with like the time constraints and everything. And I think it's a really cool, my takeaway is to do these kinds of activities with our staff, because sometimes I feel my role in the school is kind of like blurry between being part of like the staff and then a bit of admin. But I feel that sometimes decisions are taking an admin and we don't really consider teachers' thoughts and what they're going through. And so I think activities like this would help give a wider perspective, so that when admin makes a decision, they have more ideas and more things to consider than what admin just sees, instead of including what teachers' experiences are as well. So that's my biggest takeaway. I thought of several topics that we could use that in my school to include teachers as well, and for the final decisions and stuff.
And because of time, we'll just do one more.
Yes, I also have a very similar takeaway, and I think that speaking with colleagues about the problems that you have, and this activity with the time constraints, with the phases, really allowed for communication to flow, for you to feel like understood, on the same page as other people, and to get fresh ideas. Like, we were gridlocked on a problem in my classroom, and now I feel that I have a different perspective and another way to try and tackle the problem.
Love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm seeing that a lot of the replies are coming into direct message. So I'm going to save the chat and find a way to capture that on these slides, because I think some of the sharing happening directly to me, I think accidentally, is really awesome too. And I want to make sure that that's captured. So as we kind of leave today and go with the charge, we thought this image was really striking, and a good kind of thought source. So technology should blank. Should be designed by everyone, should be open, should be easy to use and fix. So as you think about ed tech and social justice and equity, what is your blank? Ed tech should. What is that for you? How do you fill in the blank? And let that be your charge to continue this work, because we know, right, today is just a step in that direction. So what fills the blank for you, and how does that help you continue your work? We have some resources here for you that we used throughout our design, but also to carry on this work. And then there's a link to the session feedback. We'd love to hear what you thought. And we just really want to thank you for being open and stepping in and stepping back when needed, and asking questions and thinking creatively about tackling these issues, which we face every day. So thank you so much. And we really are so happy that we had a chance to connect with all of you today.